currently, as we speak, there are about 180 persons on death row, and they are all there because of murder.
Yes.
So if you amend the Criminal Offences Act, at least that would cover murder.
Welcome to Legal Agenda. My name is Matilda Nartey, and today we are looking at the general human rights issues in the country. I have with me here Ghanaweb, who is the country director for Amnesty International Ghana, to help us discuss this. You are welcome, Madam Ghanaweb.
Thank you so much, Matilda.
First of all, I will congratulate you for helping Ghana, your continuous call for the abolishment of death penalty, making Ghana the 29th in Africa.
Yes.
Can you throw more light on this and how you were able to make this come to pass?
Yes, so thank you so much for congratulating us. In fact, it was a group effort. Okay. We had a coalition of CSOs and other partners who believed in the abolition of the death penalty. It's been something that Amnesty International has been doing for years now. We've been fighting for the abolition of the death penalty. So at the beginning, based on recommendations from the Constitution Review Commission, which was in 2011, they met in 2011, I believe, and they made some recommendations. They recommended that within the 1992 Constitution, we should change the death penalty to life imprisonment. And we all know through that recommendation, a referendum would have to be done.
Definitely.
But referendums are expensive. I mean, let's not, dilly-dally about it. It's something that will be very expensive for our country. Back then in 2011, 2012, although these recommendations came up, it would be very difficult for our country to do a referendum. So based on that, we really had to look back at things and re-strategize. Okay. And that is where we went into a consultation process with one lawyer called Lawyer Martin Pebu.
Okay.
And I mean, he's a very smart gentleman, and he brought up a very strategic idea of just amending the Criminal Offences Act. And once we amend the Criminal Offences Act, we'll be able to at least abolish the death penalty to some extent. Because currently, as we speak, there are about 180 persons on death row, and they are all there because of murder. Yes. So if you amend the Criminal Offences Act, at least that would cover murder. So, that started a consultative process, and that's when Honorable Francis Xavier Sosu also came on board, the MP for Medina. Yes, he's a human rights activist as well, and also a lawyer. So at the time we were consulting with him, he wasn't an MP, he was just a lawyer, human rights lawyer, and an aspiring MP. So through that, he also said, okay, why don't we present it as a private member's bill? And it was through that we began the whole campaigning and, very pushy with media engagement and all those things. And I must say, yes, Amnesty spearheaded this, but there was still so much support from key government officials, from CSOs and things like that. And I'm happy that at least once the consultative process began, and we were able to place the bill in Parliament. Now, you'd be surprised, this just happened last year. So within 1 year, although it took a lot of years of campaigning and strategic meetings, we've been able to achieve something great in Ghana's history. And even after they voted in favor of amending the Criminal Offences Bill and the Armed Forces Act, because that also came later on, through that, after they did that, the president actually assented to it within a week. Okay. The president signed the bill into law. So I think that is a great achievement for Ghana, something that we're extremely proud of. And as a people, we should be proud of this. Yes.
So do you see some challenges, or have you identified some human rights challenges in the country, in Ghana specifically?
Oh, absolutely. Amnesty International, every year, we come out with a human rights report. And that human rights report talks about the key abuses, human rights abuse across the world. And with Ghana, there are very specific ones. You know, there's been an increase in police brutality. We all know that. There's also been an increase in, you know, the rights for freedom of expression. Journalists are being attacked, you know, not just on social media, but physically. And, you know, there's a lot of discrimination on marginalized groups. And when I talk about marginalized groups, we're talking about women, children, and then the LGBTI community. All that, yes, our human rights record is not exactly great. And then, of course, we have to talk about witchcraft accusations as well. This is something that is very serious within, you know, human rights abuses in Ghana. There's not a day goes by that we don't hear about an older lady being accused of a witch and being lynched in public. You know, so, you know, Amnesty, we are trying our best to do a lot of public education on these issues. And then there's the issue of forced evictions. We used to work a lot on forced evictions as well. So all these things, yes, Ghana, we're making progress, but there are definitely some specific human rights abuses that we need to do more.
You were specific on some of the challenges.
Yes.
So let's discuss this media freedom.
Yes.
Because the free speech of the journalists and what's happening to them. We heard about the allegedly NDP tags who went to UTV to attack them.
Yes.
So we've not heard from you on it. What is Amnesty International?
Well, I mean, we definitely condemn any type of physical violence. It doesn't matter the provocation or you can't justify violence, okay? So Amnesty International, we protect the rights of everyone, and we definitely condemn violence in any form because it's inhuman and it's intolerable. Normally we don't, the thing is there are just so many human rights abuses and issues that come up in Ghana, and we can't comment on everything. Otherwise, then it becomes sort of reactive, monotonous within the media space. What we try and do is that, yes, we come out and condemn certain issues, and then others, we do a lot of backdoor work, do some research, background checks, and then try and see, okay, how are we able to shape this and do something that will impact the society positively? So it takes research, it takes consultation with, you know, the parties involved, and then how best we can also support whichever victim of abuse, and you know, so it's a lot of analytical work that goes into it.
But do you think Amnesty International is doing enough, or because of the cases you get every time, you kind of get overwhelmed with issues?
Oh,
because a lot of, I don't know whether a lot of people even know the activities you do here in Ghana. So
yes. So Amnesty, we do a lot of advocacy, human rights education, public education. In terms of cases of abuse, we don't handle cases because we don't have lawyers, you know. It's not a law firm, or you know, So what we do is that if you bring cases, specific cases on human rights abuses, yes, we can maybe push the case and do some consultation with you. However, we work a lot with STRAJ.
Okay.
Yes, we have to work a lot with STRAJ, the Commission for Human Rights and Administrative Justice, and we push the cases to them. We refer it to them, and then we follow up on it because they have investigators. So that's what we do. So that is one thing Amnesty does. But what we do is a lot of human rights education. So we do that in schools, communities, and we're a membership-based organization. So you wouldn't believe, but we actually have about 6,000 members in Ghana, and they are spread across the country. So what we do is that we train our members to also train others in terms of human rights. So we look at freedom of expression. We look at ending discrimination. We look at gender equality, and more specifically like domestic violence, rape, menstrual hygiene. That's one of the campaigns we are on currently. So we do a lot in that aspect, and then protection of human rights defenders is also one aspect, like where you're talking about the journalists, you know, having their rights abused.
Yes.
We also look at that as well, definitely.
Okay, but you spoke about earlier, you spoke about the witches.
Yes.
Every time, I mean, someone is tagged as a witch.
Yes.
And I don't know whether you know that in Ghana we have about 8 witch camps at the
I
north.
think there are 6 right now, yes.
6 right now. So
Yes.
what are you doing about that?
So that as well, we work with also a coalition. You hear me using coalition a lot
Yes.
because I believe in collaborative work. I believe in partnership, and you can't do much without partnering. So we're collaborating with a number of CSOs and government as well. Ministry of Gender is on board. We have a coalition that is looking at the witchcraft accusations bill. It was through this coalition that we were able to push the bill to be passed. Now, the president hasn't signed the bill into law, so we are trying to do more advocacy on that. The same coalition went to visit Gambaga just a few months ago to analyze the situation there. We're working, Mental Health Authority is on that coalition as well.
And these camps have been there for a while.
Yes. So I know that the long-term situation is that we plan on closing down the camps in the long term. So what is happening is that we are trying to draw up a roadmap. This is being done with the Ministry of Gender, a roadmap on how best to close the camps, because you can't do it immediately. Because the argument is some of these women, it's like a safe haven for them. However, you know, it's a safe haven away from their communities that have ostracized them. However, it's supposed to be somewhere temporary. It's not supposed to be permanent stay, right?
Okay.
So some of the women there have psychological challenges. Some of them do not have livelihoods, things like that. So I know, you know, there's a lot of work going into checking the psychological challenges of the women there. I know they are looking at skills development. And I know there's also a discussion going on how many of them want to be reintegrated back into their communities or moved into another community. You know, and we have to look at the repercussions. So something like this, it's really on a case-by-case basis, and it involves a lot of consultative work, going there, talking to the leader of the different witch camps. So all this, we have to look at it. It's going to be a slow process, unfortunately, but I know work is being done. I know.
Talking about getting support, do you get enough support from the government? Because you see, we are looking at human rights issues, and day in, day out, we see people's rights have been abused every time.
Yes.
They are being abused. Do you get enough support from
So
the
we
government?
do get support from the government, not necessarily on all issues, but we consult with the government, and it's, you know, it's not just, Ghana is a democracy, so it's not just about government, it's about parliament, and it's about the people. So we have to get support from all these three, not just governments, because in order to pass laws, government needs parliament.
Exactly.
And parliaments to pass laws,
Yes.
they need support of the people.
Yes.
So Amnesty faces the same process when it comes to human rights abuses. We need the support from people, from government, from parliament. Now the issue is, not everybody understands that this is a human rights abuse. We have to understand that. So a lot of education has to be done, a lot of public education. I'll give an example, the death penalty. Not everyone felt it needed to be taken out of Ghana law.
Of course, if
Yes.
someone
And even
you-
some were
you-
parliamentarians,
you-
and some were government officials, you understand. So a lot of lobbying and education had to be done on why it's not
needs to be
feasible in Ghana. And there are just so many arguments. You know, people say, oh, it deters. Guess what? It doesn't. There are statistics, there's data that actually shows that death penalty does not deter crime. It doesn't.
Okay.
There's statistics for that. And there's also statistics that show that, unfortunately, within our system in Ghana, most of the people on death row are from a particular class.
Okay.
it's not me and you that is going to be on death row. Some people can pay, in fact, can pay your way, and you go and murder someone, you pay someone, and you won't, you know, you will not be acquitted. Nothing will happen to you, basically. And unfortunately, it's people who come from poor backgrounds who end up in jail for petty crimes, for murder and things like this.
It means people shouldn't have confidence in our justice system.
No, I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is that our justice system is not perfect.
Okay.
And that is normal in this country. We're a developing country. Every justice system in the world has loopholes, and Ghana is part. Our justice system is not perfect. And because of that, the system does not help those coming from poor backgrounds. And unfortunately, when you go and look at the statistics, most of the people on death row are from poor backgrounds.
Okay.
So what does this mean? Some of them, not all, some of them maybe didn't face a fair trial. Some also did not understand what they've done and the consequences, you see. You'll be surprised that some people think I can commit a crime and I wouldn't go to jail, or, you know.
True.
So again, it's education. And that is what we really try and push at Amnesty as well.
Everyone needs the perfect snack to munch on during a fun moment.
Wow.
Enjoy the tasty McBerry Twist cupcakes, deliciously baked and packaged for a sweet treat. Premium quality cakes baked with love for all, enriched in butter and milk.
Yummy. Oh.
McBerry Twist cupcakes, simply irresistible. Try one today. This advert is FDA approved.
So, what do you do? I mean, talking about this rights, there are some specific, I don't want to go into LGBTQ
Okay.
and other stuff, but you know, there are some rights which, because of the culture of the people, I mean, they refuse to acknowledge it, that these are rights of the people. So in such circumstances, what do you do? Do you put sanctions on such countries? Because like you said, the government work with the people come back to, and I mean, so how do you do this? How do you
I mean, Amnesty International doesn't have a right to be putting sanctions on anyone. We can do recommendations. So just like the United Nations. So the United Nations Human Rights Council, they have a process called the Universal Periodic Review of Human Rights. So usually this process is every 5 years, where they consult CSOs. Now, it's a very serious process. They consult CSOs and look at the human rights situation in every country. And based on, because you know governments put in their reports for human rights situations, but you know, they also want a different view from CSOs so that they can compare the views. So when they get this report, UPR reports from the people, then they are able to make recommendations. I know recently, I think they had it in 2022, that was 2017, and then they had 2022. And they came up with more than 200 recommendations on human rights issues. And then Ghana has to sit down and decide, okay, what can we work on within the next 5 years? You understand? And through that process, Ghana is able to see, okay, we're not doing this right. How can we change this? What can we do better? And again, like any law, any issue you bring up, yes, you have to do that public education. You have to talk to people. There needs to be dialogue. People need to understand, why is this an abuse? It's the same way domestic violence. People could justify hitting their spouse. Now, I'm not going to be specific about hitting wife or husband because it can happen both ways. People justify it. Right. Like, this person was rude to me, so I slapped the person. Yes. And then you have to educate the person, no, that's wrong. It's a human rights abuse. You can't physically abuse someone regardless of the gender. You know, so it's about talking about issues. You have to talk. Culture It's a very argumentative thing, and I do believe that everybody has their culture and needs to keep it. However, there are certain things in the culture you have to change it. Like the way we accuse older women of being witches. Nobody is saying, we have our suspicions, you know, we say, oh, this person's a witch, this person is... I think our culture likes to be suspicious. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
Now, when you act on the suspicion and go and physically abuse someone, that is the issue. So it's the same with other issues. Maybe you might not subscribe to something. Maybe you don't like something, or you don't think this is right because it's not part of your culture. That's actually okay, because it's your opinion. But the moment you act on that and it hurts someone in the process, that becomes a human rights abuse. And I think people need to make that difference. You understand?
So, talking about recommendations, if you make recommendations and the people who are supposed to act on it are not doing it, then of what use is?
Yeah, so, you know, this is, again, it boils down to international law, because every state is sovereign. We have some level of sovereignty. So, yes, things can be recommended. And Ghana does well. I mean, we've signed on to a lot of treaties. We've ratified a lot of things.
Yes.
And I believe the current government and previous government, they all are for human rights, like better human rights situation in Ghana, okay? However, it's a consultative process and it involves a lot of people. So based on that, sometimes some laws, you know, take time to pass, and then again, I will talk about education. There are people that have never even heard that maybe there's a law you can go to jail for accusing someone of being a witch and acting on it.
They don't know.
They don't know. So how are you able to tell someone, no, this is wrong? You can't beat your child with a chair. You know, sometimes some people do that, a stick. For the child to be bruised, it is child abuse.
Yes.
But, you know, this is something that has been part of our culture, right? Who wasn't beaten, you know? And now we are saying don't beat. There are other measures for correcting your child.
Yeah.
So all this is education, and education cannot be done in one day. It's something that's a process. You have to continue talking to people. We have we have male champions, what we call male champions for sexual and gender-based violence. So some of these male champions, they form groups like boys' clubs, and they talk about, you know, beating women, gender equality, and they explain, and you'll be shocked the kind of arguments that happen. And, you know, it's okay because it's a safe space to argue, debate, so that everybody's opinions are heard, and then through that, you let them understand that, no, this is wrong, and this is why we are saying it's wrong. So it's going to take time. Behavioral change takes time, but, you know, we are working, we'll get there one day.
I just want us to go straight to your website and some of the things you do. Looking at child's rights, when you look at the convention, Article 42,
yes,
you have, amongst your duties is to educate children and adults about child's rights, which seldom happens.
Yes.
Because ignorance of right put children at greater risk of abuse, discrimination, and exploitation. Is Amnesty International pushing the campaign?
Yes,
so hard?
Absolutely. So again, we do advocacy. So when we talk about advocacy, we're talking about laws. We're talking about, you know, changing laws and then how those laws impact people. So we do a lot of that, but we also do a lot of public education. And that public education, we do it a lot in schools, junior high schools, senior high schools, and tertiary schools. We, depending on the subject, then we talk about them. So, for example, right now, when we talk about freedom of expression, we're looking at protests. When we talk about, because, you know, there's been a lot of protests in Ghana. Lately. So, yes. So we are looking at protests. When we talk about gender equality and non-discrimination, we are looking at women and domestic violence, sexual and gender-based violence. And we're also looking at menstrual hygiene. So with menstrual hygiene, we're looking at the schools. And you know, through menstrual hygiene, we're talking about school retention. You know, if somebody doesn't have a sanitary pad or doesn't know that, okay, I'm in my menses, you know, I'm not coming to school because I don't have a pad. You know, this actually happens.
Yeah.
And so we do a lot of education on that. You know, we try and supply pads to certain schools, underprivileged schools. And we look at that. And then we also talk about child marriage. All those things are part of the human rights education that we do.
I think in Ghana, the child abuse start right from birth. I mean,
Yes.
realize that even at birth, you don't have an identity. Because, yeah. And I know these are some of the things that Amnesty International is, I mean, educating people
Yes,
on.
absolutely.
But the system is such that even when you want to, I know a lot of adults that, I mean, they have to go before they go to the birth and death registry to get their birth certificate.
Yes.
So what are you doing?
So in that aspect in particular, we do not work on birth registration, but I know UNICEF is working a lot on birth registration because it's very important, especially in the judicial system, where if a child commits a crime, now they are determining whether the person is a minor or an adult. And most of these people don't have birth certificates.
Where children have committed some form of crime
and condemned to the adults.
Exactly.
Yes. So because of that, I know UNICEF is doing a lot of work in terms of birth registration in order to establish that fact that, okay, you have an identity and this is your age. So I know in that aspect, that's what you... So that's why I say it's a collaborative. We can't do all. I mean, Amnesty International is in 80 plus countries around the world. However, you know, we're activists, we're human rights activists, and we try and work on as many issues contextually. What's happening in Ghana, we focus on the issues that are really affecting Ghana. However, there are some issues that definitely we have to share the pie. So, you know, we collaborate with other NGOs or donor partners that work on the same issues.
Let's look at the state of our prisons.
Yes, prison conditions.
The prison condition is so bad. I mean, you see that they are so overcrowded.
Yes.
I mean, and sometimes people get out of the prisons and rather get worse than how they even entered. Or
so the thing with prison, okay, the general standard for prisons is it's supposed to be a reformative center. Not just for punishment, but you're also supposed to come out reformed.
Exactly.
So I know prisons is doing a lot. They have a lot of skills development within the prison. So you can learn different skills. I'm aware of that for both the women's and men's side. But they still need support, okay? And then I know the feeding. Feeding currently at prisons is 1 cedi 80 pesos for the whole day. It's not per meal.
So you can imagine the kind of meal that they will be
What can
giving.
you, even KK is 5 cedis, so that KK cry is too small for you. So, yeah, so Amnesty is really trying to appeal to governments to increase the feeding allowance for prisoners. But we're also working with other CSOs like Post Foundation, Legal Resources Center, and we're looking at what do you call it? We're looking at the prison conditions, but also trying to do non-custodial sentencing. So non-custodial sentencing simply means community service for petty crimes. So those that have stolen a goods, you know, so they are not on remand. Because in Ghana, when you're on remand, you are put in prison.
Yes.
And you are waiting
Yes.
to be
heard.
And you know, we are working a lot with the judicial system, with some of the other CSOs to see, okay, what can we do to ease up the situation in prisons? Because I hear as we speak, I think the prison is 40% over capacity.
Yes.
So we are really trying our best in those terms to see how best we can help. So it's basically the feeding allowance that we're looking at. We're also looking at supporting prisons for skills development. And then we're looking at the non-custodial sentencing. Yes.
All right.